So let's talk about, you've played different roles in throughout your career, right? From producer, from radio broadcaster to content creator right now, and probably from different, or probably there are different things that we don't know about. Could you share with us? Or so, which part of this do you enjoy the most?
Ooh, I enjoy Ring Incense the most for sure. I think it's a show that allows me. So I love the radio broadcasting part, right? The ability to connect with so many people and have this kind of interaction on air with my co-hosts is a lot of fun, and it really stimulates my brain. It's the same reason why I like doing moderation sessions or even interviews like this, right? Because it's a live show. You've got to think on the fly. You've got to really engage with the audience. And I love that. I really do. I used to do quizzes last year. And I think there's a certain performative element to it that I really enjoy. And I think I feel like I'm good at it to a certain extent, which is why I like, it's again like the challenging part, right? Find something that's a bit difficult, but also something you feel that you can accomplish. So that's my favorite part. Ring and Sense is a big part of that. It gives me a lot of value because over the last must be just over 2 years now of presenting the show. I really feel like I've connected with a lot of people, and I get DMs and things like that about people who have said they found value or they didn't understand this, and then now they do, and it makes you there's a warm fuzzy feeling that comes from that, and I really enjoyed that, and it feels like like I'm tangibly helping people build their relationships with money, and that I think is just super valuable, and I really don't know how to really put that directly into words. I love the content creation part. I think the radio broadcasting and the content creation are kind of parallel to each other. So it really is. I enjoyed the expression. I've always enjoyed the element of expression in the work, whatever the work is. I used to be a barista for a little while part time when I was in uni, and I used to like engaging with the customers at the front clubhouse. Yes, they're always going to be they're going to be unpleasant ones, but there are a lot of them are actually just really nice people who want their regular cup of coffee and in an environment where they feel like it's kind of home but not home at the same time. So that would be my answer. I love the expression part of the work. So whether it's content creation, I did a clubhouse with Stephen Young from Wealth Vantage and MyPF as well, just a few days ago. That kind of connection and building relationships and all the cliches that come with it. Yes. That's what I enjoy.
So which part of like all this kind of job, or do they all have a similarity, or that when you are doing those, like you feel like you are yourself? Because I'm pretty sure like throughout your career, you probably come about different things, or sometimes like you are just, you are asked to do different things, probably due to, I don't know, like this or that reason.
I think it's conversations like this, Kat, to be honest. It's the live element, the IG lives that I do, even the Ring and Sense to a certain extent, but because we have to remember like anything I do for BFM comes within like a certain BFM standard, right? There's a certain level of what's the word here? Not an image, but there's we're a bit more serious on air. Yes, that's the word. Professional. That's the one. I can't act like a monkey or a buffoon on air, right? I can't make stupid jokes all the time. I try and get away with a few here and there. But there's also a certain level of professionalism that must come with it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a different product altogether. And I enjoy it all the same. But if you're asking about when do I feel most like myself, it's conversations like this. It's IG lives I do with the people I love talking to. Surai Sainuddin is a great example. I love having conversations with her. Mr. Money TV, Stephen Yong as well on Clubhouse. That's why I really like Clubhouse, and I feel really bad that I've been neglecting the app recently because work has gotten a bit crazy, and I hope to get back to it soon enough. But that would be my very long-winded answer after that.
All right, good answer. Right. So, what are the things you have learned from each of this role? Are they just like keep helping you grow and get better and better, or do they each like make you discover a different side of you?
Oh, each of them come with their own personal development for sure, 100%. So at BFM, I was a pure play producer for must have been 1.5 years. A lot of times producers work goes unnoticed because you're not on air, you're behind the scenes, you're keeping the clocks run, making the trains run on time, making sure the ads play and the show starts, or even behind the scenes booking the callers, getting the content ready. There's a lot of hard work that goes behind, and producers they're not the front face of a lot of the work. And the first 6 months of being a producer was some of the most stressful times of my life because I was learning so much, and it felt like so much. I felt like I was drowning. And every week just felt like another week on top of the other. But eventually, I learned the skills that I needed, and eventually became more comfortable with the stresses. I also learned the most powerful thing when I was a producer, especially when you do the paneling, which is the technical part. When you go
Mm-hmm.
live, which is a lot of buttons and things like that, checklist. I just started. I have one book that is just a checklist every day. The same thing. I write down each thing that I have to do when I copy from the previous page, and I check it off one at a time. Each time I do it, it's a very tangible way of doing it, and I make sure that I don't forget anything. Because when you're the producer and you forget to, let's say, do a particular thing to the system, the radio that you might not go live. So these are the things that are really, really important. But I also learned to have a thick skin and pitch people shows and emails and dealing with things like that. Lah. It is really like being the producing part is just learning to just solve problems. That's what I learned. The presenting part came with a whole different ballgame. So with Ring and Sense, I learned a lot more about how to. Actually, Ring and Sense was always a very natural thing to me. I was very interested in it. So the learning part from that was more on the content side. As I grew with it, I grew with the content and the engagement, as I engaging with the guests and things like that, and more mature and all of that. So Ring and Sense was more of a content development part of me. Didn't really learn from the personal development part. But being a presenter came with the whole, like what I was talking about earlier, right? It's a live show. You've got to be able to think on the fly. You've got to learn how much is too much talking, how much is too little talking. What is the timing like? When sometimes how you sound on air may not be how you think you sound. These are the things that I learned on the on the go. And sometimes when you think you're being sarcastic, because people can't see your face, you're just pure audio. People may not pick that up, and so it sounds like you're being snarky or you're just being rude. So these are the things you learn. Also, you learn how to take feedback, and sometimes feedback can be quite rough, especially when people don't know who you are. Like people send in feedback. Oh, this presenter was making a fool of himself, and then we reply back and say, oh, thank you for your feedback, really sorry that you felt this way, we're striving to improve, etc. And then people realize that you're a person, and then they reply and be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it that way. So it's really interesting, right, when people look at you as a person as opposed to a personality or just this voice on the radio. But yes, each of them came with their different skill sets, and different learnings, and I'm always learning, right? I think that's really the thing. And sometimes when you're on air, it's just chemistry that you just can't. It's something that you can't really teach. I guess it's really who your co-hosts are. But the learning is non-stop, lah. You just got to keep moving forward, one step at a time. Learn to adapt. Last year was a big year actually because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So a lot of things changed. We had to learn to be agile. So that taught me a lot about just resiliency and learning to, I guess, learning to better wall off certain things mentally to be like, these are the things I can manage, and these are the things I have no control over. So if I have no control over this, I should minimize the stress that comes from that. It's not easier said than done, of course. Till today, I still get very stressed about a lot of these things. But I think acknowledgement of these things is a first step. Kat, I'm not sure whether I actually answered your question. I know I spent a bit of time on the producing part, which I think was a really important defining part of my career. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that is true. Like, I mean, the whole thing that I mean, you're trying to say is that from each of the role, really, like, you got better, you learn new things, you probably push yourself to the different limits. And I wonder, was there
Step by
any
step.
part that you were very uncomfortable at first, but you just forced
Oh,
yourself through it?
when I started producing and paneling and stuff like that, that was tough. That was really tough, because it's a very technical a part of the show, and I'm not the most gifted when it comes to technical things. I can talk, I can go on air. In
Technical?
fact, the first time it's very like, because it's very like it's all these different machines and these buttons and a system. So when we
Okay.
go live, I have to do the counting. We have half an hour. I have to keep the math in my head. These are the amount of ads we have. The news bulletin is this long. We have this amount of time to do the conversation. Oh, we got to make sure the call patch is true. So it's like you're a train conductor, and you're making sure that all the trains are going on time and the timing is correct and things like that. So I don't do well with that much information. So I always found that very stressful for me. I mean, I got comfortable with it over time. I built systems for myself that worked. The checklist was a lifesaver during that time. Going on air is always felt, and I know this sounds may come off a bit conceited or narcissistic, but it always felt a bit more natural to me. it just felt like I was alive. Like the minute the light goes on, it's like a different side of me comes out, and it's this person who's ready to go, right? And of course, I was scared the first few times I went on air. I was terrified. But the minute it's go time, it's either do or die. And I learned a long time ago that I was going to do and not die. Oh, too old.
Interesting.
That's so
Yeah.
dramatic, Roshan. So dramatic.
But that's what I wanted to hear from you actually, to really about, yeah, each of the things that you learn. And you definitely become a different person right now.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not the same person I was 2.5, 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean that I'm not. I mean, I'm a different in the sense that I've grown a lot for sure. And I've learned a lot about my own flaws and things that I've needed to patch up, or at least recognize that there are things that I can't do, and I need my team to support those things, or I support them in different ways, or learn to lean on my strengths instead. So those are the kinds of things that I guess that it's been quite a journey actually, and you're over. I guess I'm still me, but maybe more refined and more mature and a bit more learned. Go and fall enough times, you learn to pick yourself up after each time, and then you kind of, oh,
What about like when it comes to investment? So I believe you
mm,
have yeah, you call yourself a personal finance nerd, and so how has your investment methods changed throughout the years, especially like being a producer, from all the things that you pick up, talking to different people? How has that changed?
how has my investing changed? It's become more structured. It's become less haphazard. It's become less lalang, move with the wind and see what happens here. It's become a lot more purposeful, right? And in fact, it's become way less active. The minute I started working, I stopped dabbling in active investment in terms of like buying my own stocks and things like that because I couldn't handle the stress. I couldn't sleep at night. And then when you have work, you want to use your productivity and your willpower for your active income and gain on those levels. So I sold a lot of my stocks, or if not all, when I first started working, and even during my internship, because it was very early mornings. We would wake up and sleep before I would sleep before the U.S. markets opened, and I couldn't monitor my stocks, and that made me very anxious, and that wasn't healthy for me personally. And I used to own Apple stock, so I feel the pain. I sold it many many years ago. I made a lot of money then, but I could have made way more money. But the fact is, um, what would that have cost me emotionally and in terms of my health, in terms of anxiety? Maybe I'm just saying all of this to make myself feel better. And even if it is so, it doesn't matter, right? Because at the end of the day, what is the current situation today and what have I learned from all those mistakes? What I learned was one, I cannot handle the uncertainty that comes with it. I need a plan. I need a purpose. Why am I buying this stock? Why am I investing here? What is the role of EPF in my personal finances? That's what I've learned. Having a strategy and what are the purposes for those particular asset classes, right? So nowadays, I'm mostly a passive investor. I'm leveraging on EPF. I'm using my robo advisor. I have a stock portfolio still, but it's largely a value play. It's very structured. I've built rules around it. So last year when markets fell, I bought particular big tech companies that I really thought were on discounts, and those were meant for that's a value play. I'm buying it because you're not going bankrupt, my friend. This is your giant multi-trillion dollar company that has much B2B business. Okay. So I did that. And that's like a buy and leave. And I also did some growth plays. That stock portfolio will remain there. I'm not going to increase the allocation anymore. What I am doing is I'm actively adding to, of course, EPF because I have to, but also towards my robo advisor, towards the goals. I have two goals for the robo advisor, as I mentioned earlier, which is retirement and healthcare. So I'm adding actively there to grow for the long term. It's become structured. I think about what I'm doing with the money. It's the purpose. Why am I doing this and what is it for? Because if you don't have a purpose, then you get the anxiety. And that's what I felt. When a great example last year I bought Zoom stock at $111.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head, I wrote myself this beautiful statement. I was like, I'm buying this because it's going to be a 10x company. It's super growth. This is the pivotal change, structural change and all of that. It went up 30%, and I started panicking because I'm like, oh my God, there's so much money I've made here, 30%, or not even in 3 weeks. This is amazing. And I didn't want to lose that, right? But in my head, I always told myself, you've structured this in a way, a half allocation for growth. You're here to hold it for a few years. But I let the noise get to me and I sold out. Now, I'm not saying it was wrong. I mean, it's gone 4 times now since then.
Mm-hmm.
Why I was disappointed in myself is I didn't listen to my investment strategy. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing. You can have the best plan in the world, but when you actually go into the and start acting, you get punched in the face, and suddenly all plans go out the window. So you've got to be very, got to understand your own risk tolerances. That's very important. I think that's another thing I've learned over the last few years. So purpose is one, risk tolerance is another, and also the other one is that the need to take risks. But I was always not risk averse in terms of investment. I always kind of took those calculated risks, but having that purpose around the investments made it more steady, right? Like, oh, I'm doing this for retirement. I know the market average is this. I can handle this volatility. Let's go for it. Oh, I'm doing this for 10 years. Okay, I cannot take too much volatility for this. What is the average 10 years 10-year life cycle? Not life cycle, but the average 10-year block return. What's the lowest return bid for this kind of sector? So that's kind of where I look at it, right? But also just the move to passive has been a big thing for me, because I don't have the time or the energy or mental capacity to manage my own money in that sense. So
Mm-hmm.
I've given myself, but I also know from a behavioral point of view that I will get itchy and want to buy stocks. So that's why I've given myself a particular ballpark of money that I can use to buy stocks. And if I've used it up, then I've used it up. I can't add more capital there. That's a big no-no.
Mm-hmm.
I've been giving myself like let's say X amount. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's all I can use for that. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've learned. Purpose, risk, understanding your risk tolerance and being realistic about it, and understanding, I guess, the whys, and also moving to passive. Those are the few things I've learned over the last few years.